It begins with a single empty chair. A soft pool of light falls across the fabric, still shaped as if someone has just risen from it. For a moment, nothing moves. No audience laughter, no studio buzz, no echo of a director's cue. Just silence. And in that silence, a question begins to form. How does one of the brightest stars from one of television's most iconic shows end up being the last to fade? And why does her final chapter feel so much more heartbreaking than anyone expected? Long before the legends were gone, and long before nostalgia turned into grief, there was a young woman whose smile could calm a storm. Her friends called her Dawn. The world would come to know her as Mary Ann, and yet, few ever asked who she truly was when the cameras stopped rolling. Fewer still knew what the end of her story would look like. An ending marked by isolation, unexpected hardship, and a quiet heartbreak that almost no one saw coming. But that's where our journey begins tonight. In the shadows behind the laughter, because the tragic ending of the last surviving Gilligan's Island cast member isn't just about a beloved actress. It's about the hidden cost of fame, the chapters people never read, and the emotions that linger long after the spotlight has burned out. Picture the world of the early 1960s. Television was growing fast. Families gathered around their sets like it was a nightly ritual, and the dream of becoming a star still felt like magic. Into that world stepped Dawn Wells, bright-eyed, gentle, endlessly curious. She wasn't the loudest in the room, nor the most glamorous, yet something about her drew people in instantly. She had the kind of warmth you can't manufacture, the kind that made you feel safe, seen, understood. When she auditioned for Gilligan's Island, she wasn't just another actress reading lines. She was bringing pieces of herself into the room. Her sincerity, her kindness, her belief in simple goodness. And in an industry built on illusions, sincerity can be disarming. It can also be unforgettable. Soon she would become Mary Ann Summers, the wholesome, hopeful farm girl stranded on a desert island with 6 strangers. She didn't have Ginger's Hollywood glitz, the skipper's booming authority, or Gilligan's slapstick charm, but she had something else, something that made millions fall in love with her. She had heart. For 3 seasons, viewers tuned in to watch her smile, laugh, and navigate the island's harmless chaos. And although the show was often light and silly, Mary Ann was the emotional anchor. She was the one who made the island feel like home. She made people believe that goodness could survive anywhere, even stranded with a hapless first mate and a movie star who refused to get her heels dirty. But what happens when the island disappears? What happens when the laughter fades and the world moves on? For Dawn, the end of the show was the beginning of a long, winding road that was both beautiful and painfully human. She continued to act, travel, meet fans, and pour her love into her craft. She kept working longer than most of her cast. She never craved controversy, never chased scandal, never demanded to be the center of attention. She simply loved people, and people loved her back. But time is unkind. Even to those who once lit up a screen, as the years passed, one by one, the familiar faces from the island faded away. Bob Denver, Alan Hale Jr., Natalie Schaefer, Jim Backus, Russell Johnson, each loss chipped away at the magic, leaving Dawn as one of the few remaining torchbearers of a show that had become part of America's cultural DNA. She attended memorial services. She spoke at tributes. She shared memories of long days on set, the jokes, the mistakes, the friendships that felt like family. She smiled through it all, even when the grief must have felt heavier with each passing year. What does it feel like to watch your fictional family disappear until you're nearly the last one left? What does it do to your heart? Behind the scenes, life became more complicated than fans ever realized. Dawn, who had always been careful with money, found herself facing medical bills and mounting expenses that retirement simply couldn't cover. For someone who had brought joy to millions, accepting help felt humiliating. She wasn't supposed to struggle. She wasn't supposed to be vulnerable. And yet, she was. Friends who loved her stepped in. Admirers from around the world contributed. Messages poured in, messages of gratitude, of support, of love from people whose childhoods she had brightened. But how does someone as humble as Dawn reconcile decades of fame with the painful reality of needing assistance just to stay afloat? How does it feel when the world sees you as a symbol of innocence, yet you're fighting to maintain basic stability behind closed doors? Still, she kept her dignity, her humor, her hope. She continued to attend events, greet fans, and share the memories that had shaped her life. She never stopped believing in kindness. But then came the year that changed everything, a year when the world shut down, when fear hung thick in the air, and when isolation became the new reality. It was during this time that Dawn's health began to waver. The illness that swept across the world reached her too. And suddenly, the woman who once survived every fictional disaster on television was facing a very real danger. Her friends were terrified, fans watched anxiously, and Dawn, the woman who had spent a lifetime comforting others, now needed comfort herself. In her final days, she wasn't surrounded by cameras or crowds. She wasn't basking in applause or reliving the old island adventures. The world outside was quiet, uncertain, frightened, and Dawn, always so full of light, was slipping away in that quiet. There's something unbearably poetic about that. something that feels heavier than mere coincidence. Why is it that the people who bring us the most comfort often pass away during moments when the world needs comfort the most? Why does life seem to echo the stories we once laughed at? Stories of being stranded, stories of isolation, stories of trying to stay hopeful when everything feels uncertain. When news of Dawn's passing finally broke, millions paused. Some cried, some whispered stories about childhood afternoons spent watching her on television. Others admitted they had always been Team Marianne because she represented the kind of goodness that never goes out of style. But there was also a deeper sadness, the realization that she was the end of an era. With her gone, a piece of television history truly closed. She wasn't just the last surviving cast member to carry the heart of the show. She was the last link to a time when entertainment felt simpler, gentler, more innocent. Her final chapter wasn't glamorous. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't wrapped in the comforting comedy of the island, where nothing truly bad ever happened. Instead, it was real. It was raw. And it was heartbreaking. But perhaps that's why her story matters even more now. Because behind the image of Marianne, the sweet, cheerful optimist who made coconut pies and believed in the best in everyone, there was Dawn Wells, a woman who struggled, loved deeply, endured loss, and kept fighting even when life grew unbearably heavy. Her story forces us to ask questions we rarely want to ask. What happens to the people who make us smile when their own lives become difficult? Who looks after the icons who shaped our childhood memories? Why do we sometimes realize someone's importance only when they're gone? Dawn Wells didn't leave behind huge scandals or shocking secrets. She didn't chase fame or controversy. Her legacy isn't built on headlines, it's built on heart. And maybe that's why the end of her story feels so tragic. Because she deserved so much more love, more companionship, more comfort in her final chapter. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't truly leave alone. Because when someone becomes part of the world's collective memory, they never really disappear. Dawn's smile, her laughter, her warmth. They live in every fan who remembers watching her on a tiny TV screen. They live in grandparents passing down episodes to grandkids, in reruns playing softly late at night, in the quiet moments when comfort feels hard to find. Even now, people still ask the same timeless question, Ginger or Marianne. But the more time passes, the clearer the answer becomes. Ginger was glamorous, dazzling, a star. But Marianne was love. She was sincerity. She was the kind of person you wanted by your side when life got hard. And Dawn Wells carried that spirit her entire life. Her story isn't just a tragedy. It's a reminder that even the gentlest souls face battles we never see. A reminder that the people who make us feel less alone are often the ones who need connection the most. A reminder that kindness, no matter how simple, can echo across decades. Maybe the real question we should be asking is this: what would the world look like if we treated the people around us with the same warmth that Marianne brought to a fictional island? In the end, Dawn's passing wasn't just the loss of the last surviving star from a classic TV show. It was the closing of a chapter in entertainment history, a reminder that time spares no one, not even those who once seemed immortal on our screens. Her legacy is tender, bittersweet, and unforgettable. And as that empty chair fades back into shadow, we're left with one final thought lingering in the quiet. If Marianne taught us anything, it's that even when we feel stranded, even when we feel alone, there is always hope, always kindness, always the chance to reach out and hold on to the people who matter. So maybe the story doesn't end with her passing. Maybe it ends with us remembering, reflecting, and asking ourselves the question she embodied every day of her life. What does it truly mean to be kind, even when no one is watching?